So I can go for 1 hour. Just a heads up. I can go for 1 hour.
Works for me. Is Does that mean you have a hard out at
No,
eight
no, no. I don't have a
thirty?
hard out. No,
Okay,
no hard out. Yeah.
cool.
Should I wear my any?
If you wanna.
No, I'm not. Zach S.
Oh, I'm sorry. I should have told you we went live.
Oh, are we live?
We're live.
Okay. Well, good. I'm not Zach S.
Um,
Um,
I thought it would be fun to punk you, and I did not expect that.
it's all good. No, I have my any because I remember the first time I saw him. I think it was the first time I saw him. Or
And he's 2018.
yeah, at the 2018 Ennies, and you pointed him out, and you were like, "Watch out." And then I have this vivid memory of him walking to accept another Ennie, and he wore all of them and started clinking them, and I was like, "What an asshole."
Yeah, yeah,
Um, but I do have my Ennie just sitting here.
it's right
It's
there. Gold.
it's right. I guess you can't see it. It's off screen, but it's sitting there. I'm gonna like frame it. I think that's the plan.
Nice.
Um, but yeah, I guess I won't wear it. But I did wear my Raptors jersey.
You did go Raptors.
No, I don't even care about the Raptors. It's a Jeremy Lin jersey. That's
It's
it.
fair. I will always hold that he came out of my city first. So,
True.
he was a Knicks player first and foremost.
It's true. True.
Um,
He played for the Raptors when it counted in his
it's
career.
fair. It's fair. Um, who are you? This is how I start all of them.
Who am I? Who am I? One of your good friends of the tabletop gaming industry. I am Daniel Kwan. I am a I guess it's weird to say any award-winning podcaster, game designer, cultural consultant, educator, you name it. That's me.
It's fair. To be clear, you were an Emmy award-winning podcaster,
I
and
said
then all the other
podcaster.
things.
Yes,
Um,
and then all of the other things. I am not an any award-winning game designer.
or Emmy award-winning educator, which would be great.
That would be really weird. You're
Be
right.
a
You're
cool
absolutely right.
category. That should be.
Punctuation will be very important
It's
when
critical.
you actually put this in the book.
Um, God, it has to go in a book. I do these, and I'm like intellectual. I know that I need to transcribe them and edit them, and that's just a later Joe's problem. That's not right now Joe's problem.
Yeah.
Um,
Or
but
you could put it in the book that I requested you make these punctuation changes to reflect the fact that I am only an award-winning podcaster and that my
actually,
game design accolades are far less impressive.
I will. I might even do that because they're all gonna get like short prefaces. Speaking of game design accolades,
Hmm.
you dropped a new one today. Not an accolade, a game design.
Yeah, it's not an
Um,
accolade.
um,
Maybe.
Maybe. Who knows? Who knows what the reception's going to be? But Ross Rifles is out.
Yeah, it was totally unplanned too. We were literally sitting and well, I was working and then one of my co-author Patrick messaged me. He was like, "Hey Daniel, we're done Ross Rifles," and I was like, "Oh, this is great. Do you want to put it out and send it to backers?" And then we had a long conversation about how we would send it to backers. And then I said, "Why are we having this conversation? We should just use the drive-through fulfillment tool." And then we argued about whether or not we should do that. And I was like, "Why wouldn't we?" Um,
It's right there.
so then we did it. It's right there. And I was like, "It's right there. It sends them all unique code." And then they were like, "Well, what if it sends it to an email that's not their drive-through?" I was like, "It doesn't matter. They click the link and they sign in. It's
Yeah,
fine.
it's the whole thing.
It's the whole thing. It does it all for you. Bless drive-through RPG." So yeah, we
A,
dropped it, and then I was like, "I'll tweet."
a sentiment I never hear. Bless Drive Through RPG.
You know what? As in the sense of, hey, look, I'm fulfilling a game in digital format. This is way easier, and I do enjoy the fact that there is a service that logs your purchases digitally. So just in
Sure.
case you delete it from your computer, you still have it there. So I appreciate it for what it is. I don't. I mean, look, a service will have to take a cut from a creator. Um, but the degree to which they cut from the creator is up for debate.
It is. Mostly the thing I really just hear, and I was always lucky, all the things I have on my drive through, I never had to deal with putting them up myself. But it sounds like it's just an absolute nightmare to get things to, like, work properly, especially with POD. Um,
I've never tried the POD. We're doing all of our stuff local.
okay.
Ross Rifles is like organic Canadian press book. We're literally printing it in Toronto. We're going to make sure that we've seen fewer people than normal so that we can get together in person and package them all. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do, instead of curbside pickup, we'll do curbside delivery for all the Toronto people. We're going to drive around. I'm going to drop them all off personally to the Toronto people who requested it, and then we'll mail them all off to people.
That's
So yeah.
like cute is the word that comes to mind. I don't know.
Yeah,
It's
and like,
nice.
and look, like the people who we're dropping them off to are people who I like know and aren't like
Sure.
sketchy.
Yeah.
So like people you probably know too.
Yeah, you're not like driving out to Jane and Finch and being like,
I'll meet you on
what's
this corner
exactly? Yeah, just
with a
like
box full of packages. Yeah,
you just
like
end up
like
accidentally transporting drugs around all of Toronto. Just
yeah,
no idea.
Ross Rifles. It's the most addictive tabletop RPG on the market right now. Canadian made. No, and then like one of the backers like lives down the street from me, so I'll walk over to their house and just like be like drop it on their porch and then run away.
I like it.
Yeah. I
Uh,
think it's cute. I think it's also like super Canadian.
yeah, it is. But like again, cute is the word.
Yeah,
Um,
and I originally had this idea where we were all gonna take selfies with each person we drop it off at. Now I'm just gonna take very, very far selfies with everyone, and then I'll just make a collage. And then from a distance, it'll just look like photos of me taking selfies with people in the background.
you're gonna need to blur out house numbers. Make sure you remember to do that. Don't dox
Yes, I
people
don't want to
accidentally.
dox anybody.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Um,
Um, but yeah, it's so weird because like we went into the Kickstarter last October
mhm.
with most of the book already written.
Well, I mean, you've been working on this. You were working on this when I met you.
Yes, we started it when we started the company in 2017.
Yeah.
Um, and it has changed like so dramatically since then. But yeah, we've been working on it for a while. But like I know a lot of designers when they're working on it, they're working on like the game mechanics and their playbooks and they're perfecting those.
Hmm.
At the same time, we were also, literally writing a history book.
Hmm.
Because like a third of the book is a history book. So we were like traveling around, going to World War I sites, like museums in Canada.
Hmm.
We went all the way to the Canadian War Museum in Ottawa and spent 5 hours with their armorer looking at every single Ross rifle variant and the Enfield variant we could see,
Okay.
um, handling like artifacts, um, like uh, like dog tags, things like that, grenades. We saw a very unique machine gun called the Hewitt automatic rifle. There were only a couple prototypes ever made, and it was intended to actually convert the Ross rifle into a viable weapon because they had this surplus of Ross rifles,
Okay.
and so a man actually invented a machine gun that used like 20 to 30 components of the Ross rifle, and it cost a fraction of like a Lewis or a Vickers machine gun. And it was going to change the war. And then when he was ready to produce it, the war ended. He went bankrupt. But there were only a handful of prototypes made, and we got to see one of them, which is really neat.
Tight.
So yeah, it was cool. We did a ton of research and then turned it around in less than a year.
Okay, so here's like the first actual question because this
Yeah,
is this is just us chatting, but like
yeah.
there are some things that I want to ask you about. So something popped up in like the ever shifting discourse today, that has come up many times before, which is broadly, what's the value in being either widely or deeply read in the medium in which you're working? Um,
Widely and deeply read in that you know other games or that you know
yeah, so like
content.
in the case of games that you know other games, right? In the case
Hmm.
of film that you watch movies, in the case of being a writer that you read books, yada yada yada. Um,
Yeah.
we are people who like doing the research, right? You have an academic background, so do I.
Hmm.
Um, as you've like delved more into game design, right? Like when I first met you, you were working at the ROM.
I was a trad guy when you
Yeah,
met
you
me.
were a trad
Just say
guy.
it as it is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But you were
Yeah.
doing interesting things with trad work. But like, you were a trad guy, but clearly you wanted to know more. Um, there's the trad people out there who are just like, this is it, this is all I need.
Yeah.
I'm cool in this ecosystem and I'm fine. Um, and I'm gonna look at it essentially uncritically and just keep doing what I'm doing because it's fun. That was not you, right? So you were a
No.
special type of trad guy. You were a trad guy who wanted to go do more. But even when you started branching out, you like always kept what I've perceived as like a hunger for knowledge acquisition. Like you want to find more. It's not just find more items, right? You want to have a broader understanding of the thing.
I feel
Um,
like, yeah, totally. I feel like, I mean, at least 30% of the conversations I have with you are about finding new games or learning a new thing from a game.
yeah, it's why we speak all the time. I think,
Yeah.
in big
I'd
part.
be like to answer the question, like, do I think it's valuable to be well read? I think absolutely. There are so many, and I'll give you a couple of examples why. Like one, like I think it's super important to be well read in games because it gives you, and I don't mean just like games lore.
Hmm.
Like I'm talking about game mechanics. Um, I think it's so important to be well read in game mechanics in particular because as an educator, because you worked in education, I still work in education. Um, when you are playing games in an educational context, you're going to run into times when that specific game, that trad game, D&D, Pathfinder, those two, right,
Hmm.
does not meet the needs of the person you're working with. And so how do you adapt? Right? You could adapt if you're brilliant or if you're clever and make something up,
Sure.
right? But there are so many tools out there that are incredibly valuable. For instance, I think one of the earlier, I guess, one of the earliest things that I added to my toolkit was Dungeon World, and I know like Adam Koebel and all of that
Yes.
stuff right now, but as a game, um, I read Dungeon World at Shell Khan's, um, uh, I guess, recommendation,
Hmm.
and I read it and I was like, this is okay, but there's some really cool things in here that I want to add to my other games. I thought that the death mechanic was really good in that game. I thought it was narratively evocative, and I thought that the way it handled travel was really cool.
Totally.
Way better than D&D. It's like you go from point A to point B, and if you're a good DM, you might try to insert some action there, right? Um, but I thought that that was a nice structured way to do it with my students.
Hmm.
So I added that, and I thought, well, this is great, and I started doing it in the games, and it just became a part of my trad experience.
Sure.
And then you and I were talking, and I'm like 99% sure you were the one who introduced me to Perilous Wilds.
Yeah.
And I ended up taking that new Dungeon World thing I learned and then adding to that, and then branching off. And like, I wouldn't have had those experiences if I wasn't trying to learn more. Right. And I don't know if this is the case for you, but this is the case for me. Actually, I pretty much guarantee this is not the case for you. But I have a whole lot of RPG books that I've only read for certain parts of them.
Yeah. Not so much the case, right?
That's not the case for you because you read everything because you're less of a game designer and more of like an archivist, a historian of tabletop RPGs. Um, and for me, like I'm just constantly looking for new things to A, enhance the games I'm already playing, and B, make sure I'm not, creating the same thing as somebody else. Right? Because we all get caught in these design ideas and we want to go and make something. And then we realize that that thing has already been made.
And it happens with
Yeah.
shocking frequently. Let's see, right? There aren't actually that many people working in game design, and yet we retread the same ground. Really, quite a lot. Um,
Yeah.
and I have to suspect part of that is simply a lack of background.
Yeah, I also think that like I mean, even if you use the analogy of food, it's like playing the mainstream games like D&D and like Pathfinder. It's like eating the same thing over and over again. Why wouldn't you want to try something new?
Yeah,
That's
totally.
really it. It's like, do you love the hobby? Do you like storytelling? Or do you like playing this one system? And I think that's a question you need to ask on top of the one you asked me. It's like, yeah, do you think it's worthwhile to be well read? And then I would counter, well, what kind of person are we talking about? Are we
Hmm.
talking about someone who likes the mechanics of D&D and the world of D&D, or are we talking about someone who likes collaborative storytelling? If you're the person who likes the Forgotten Realms, like Faerun and all that, and
Sure.
you like the 5e mechanics, then you don't have to go anywhere else. Like I would say, go read third-party publisher stuff for fifth edition.
Sure.
Totally.
There's
Um,
more interesting content out there, but if you are
yeah,
first and foremost a player, you're just looking for like a good time, and you find something that gives you a good time, then screw it.
yeah,
Just stick with the
yeah.
thing. Uh,
But if you're somebody who likes storytelling, you should continue reading. You should be looking elsewhere because you are effectively finding new tools to make your stories richer and more interesting,
yeah,
right?
it's 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 one of those things where I have a difficult time even seeing the opposite side. Right? If I were to play devil's advocate, how do I advocate for a limited reading of a space? Um,
Yeah. I couldn't. I mean you and I are the same.
yeah,
Like you and I remember what was that store in Manhattan that you and I went to? Um
complete strategist.
yeah, so when you and I went to the Complete Strategist, we were there for a while and we were just picking through everything,
Mm-hmm.
right? We wouldn't have those experiences together if we were just like into 5e because we'd walk in, go to the 5e section and then leave.
Yeah, just be like,
Or not
oh,
even
tight.
because we would just go online and see what's the new release.
Yeah.
But like,
I don't have to
you know,
find out what the 5e release is. I just hear it. I just find it just
yeah,
happens.
I want to go to a store, look through some old boxes and find a dusty book that I've never seen before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean that's the fun of it, right? As an archivist or as a designer, I don't know. For me, that has always been the chief appeal in many ways, and so it's just interesting to hear people have. I can't say that they're like wrong or dumb or like I can't be pejorative about it.
No.
I just genuinely don't understand it.
Yeah, and there are even people who we think aren't like that. Like for instance, like I had a Jeremy Crawford and I did a panel together at a con once, and we were talking during the panel, and he talked more about other games than he did D&D, which I thought was super interesting. Because I think, you know, in order to drive, I mean, say what you want about him and say what you want about WotC, but I think it's great for someone like him with so much, you know, I guess public presence
Mm-hmm.
and influence over D&D to be looking at other games. That's how you drive that trad experience forward
Mm-hmm.
by having someone on the inside who is like us, is interested in other games.
And I mean that is that is the arc of the hobby, right? Like, yeah,
Hmm.
you have people who do the thing, but very rarely do you have people who only do that one thing, right?
Yeah.
Long enough timeline, if they stick around, they go to another company or they start their own or they work on one system or then another. It's very rare that a person just stays in even that, one singular largest vertical. Um, it's just
Yeah.
I wonder what the longest anyone has stayed working only on D&D has been. Um,
I imagine like the tabletop gaming industry is to a lesser extent like the comic book industry. You have those who like work at Marvel and work on DC, and then they're like, screw it, we'll leave and we'll start Image Comics
mhm.
and then produce some really cool stuff.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
most of the history, as I understand it, is that kind of
Hmm.
thing. Um, I mean, so this is kind of hard pivot, but speaking of history and although not WotC D&D, it would be TSR D&D. Um, I feel like you've become known
I'm the
for
guy.
you're the guy in this
I
particular
yeah.
area of let's say pointing out some of the flaws of earlier material would be the way to couch that.
I
Um,
think that's the nice way to put it.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I'm like I never thought I'd be the person. I never thought I'd be the face that the old guard hates. And that's it. And like, yeah, it was weird because, you know, I mean, for the people who are reading your zine or the people who are watching the stream and don't know, we decided one day that we would just start reading Oriental Adventures on stream. Um,
what was
it
the
came from a
intention? Like, what was even the idea
well, like
behind
I
that?
remember so I tweeted and I was like, oh, I should read Oriental Adventures on stream. And people were like, yeah, you should do that. And I was like, yeah, I should do that. Apparently, I'm very, easily persuaded.
Yeah.
But I was like, yeah, I should read Oriental Adventures. And, COVID hit and we were being quarantined and all of our Asians Represent stuff was in person.
Hmm.
So I was like, okay, well, we need hashtag content. And so let's try streaming. And I had previously been streaming on my personal channel just to kind of learn how to do this. Um, because I didn't want to learn how to stream on our channel. I kind of wanted to go to it
Sure.
as, someone with knowledge. And I was like, okay, you know what? I think we could do it. And so we put together a stream, and Steve and I decided to read Oriental Adventures. And we were like, how bad could it be? And
Really,
after
really
I
bad.
think the first 2 hours, we got like 3 pages in, and it turned into a 26-hour ordeal. Um, and you know what? It wasn't even the streams that gave me that notoriety. It's actually a tweet after.
Hmm.
So we were streaming, and we developed a pretty loyal fan base that had a lot of actually WotC staff tuning in to learn.
Hmm.
And it's how we grew our community. And I went out and tweeted, and I was like, wait, WotC is still selling Oriental Adventures. And in a fit of 3 a.m. rage, I quietly tweeting with the light of my phone illuminating my face as my partner was sleeping next to me. I tweeted, I was like, why is this still on sale? And why are you still profiting from it? And then that tweet blew up. People started attacking me, and then people started to defend me with our YouTube channel and our Twitch page. And then that's when everything blew up. Um, so I'm happy it happened because we helped move the hobby forward.
Yeah, I mean, so I gotta ask, as is so often the case, I watched the thing explode, um,
Hmm.
and then when it quiets down, you don't the wreckage isn't the right word. Whatever results isn't quite as visible as the blowing up. Um, and I have to say, I haven't kept abreast of what's come of it. Right? I kind
Yeah.
of obviously you won an ENnie. That's big. You're not persona non grata. Um, like you are quite the opposite. Um, but as someone who you've spoken about publicly, you're doing work with WotC. Um, how have you been received?
By WotC or by the community?
That's a good question. Both,
I
right?
can, I think I could only answer some of it.
Sure. No,
Um,
totally.
um, I'll start with
Whatever you're allowed to answer. Um,
honestly, WotC was really cool about it.
okay.
A lot of people reached out to me and were like, "Hey, how can we do better?" Um, that's as much as I could say right now.
Fair. No, 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 no.
Um, but I will say that, look, they were pretty cool about it, as cool as a company can be.
Sure.
They are certainly still doing a lot wrong, and they still have a lot to make up for, if that's even possible,
That you can
right?
even say that like they did okay, right? Is
Yeah.
given the ire directed toward them so often in the public sphere, like that's you. Yeah, I don't need to know anymore. That's pretty big. If you say that, that's pretty
Yeah.
big.
And look, we could say so, and we could say a lot on social media, but we have to understand that they are also a multi-million-dollar company, and they have structures built in place that prevent people, despite their best of intentions, from making immediate change.
Hmm.
Right? That's a really big thing that people have to consider. So while look, the immediate things that they did, like their disclaimer and their initial statement kind of sucked, right? Their second statement was a lot better,
Hmm.
right? They actually addressed people calling me book burner, right?
Forgot
Which
about
which I
forgot
know
about
I
that
know
part.
to you is that hurts you to the soul, right? Because that's like, look, I wasn't asking people to burn their copies of Oriental Adventures. I was
Yeah,
asking people to look at them more critically.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, I would say that WotC acted as I expected. They made some mistakes, right? Um, but they're trying to do better. I mean, like, look, people have to understand that, like, you know what I love? I used this today in a meeting. Fail. First attempt in learning.
Hmm.
And they failed and they are trying to do better. Right. And if we don't give people the chance to do better, then like where's our hobby gonna be in like 5 years?
Absolutely. I mean,
Right.
ground under the heels of a combination of video games and board games is the
Yeah,
answer.
it's good. It's gonna be like D&D when WoW was super
Yeah,
popular.
I mean, just gonna be the D20 bust.
Yeah.
Um,
As for your other question, like how the community reacted, honestly, they were like, I'll say this about the ENnie, and then I'll say this about the stream.
okay.
When we got the ENnie, which was very much the result of the stream, um, I would say like my inbox was flooded
Hmm.
with white people asking to be on Asians Represent or asking to do things with us. I had a person who asked me to be on Asians Represent to talk about, well, I'll say wargaming without outing anybody.
Okay.
And I was like, great. Are you Asian? I have to ask because I have never met you in person and we're talking via email. Are you Asian? And he said, I'm as white as can be. And I was like, cool. We can only work together if if you're I can only have you on the show if you're Asian, but your company is more than welcome to sponsor us. And then he just stopped talking to me. Um, so and then there are the people who, you know, came to me and were like, "Oh wow, like what you do has value. I'd like to hire you to consult on this thing." And I thought that was cool. Um, I'm at the point where I can be super selective with what I want to work on. Um, and and then there are the people who have been, with us since day one or even before Asians Represent, like you, who are just like, "Oh great, Daniel got an ENnie." Now we have to hear about that.
Yeah, I'm like,
Um,
cool. I'm gonna hear about that every Saturday for the next like month. Great.
yeah,
Um,
right. Um, so like, I don't know, the community has been super cool about it. I mean, the people who were very much against us have like stopped talking entirely. Um,
I mean, hey, fuck them. Like
yeah,
that's
you know what?
sometimes the best you can hope is they just go away.
Yeah, and look, I think this is a combination of I want to give them the benefit of the doubt, their anger subsiding, but also like, hey, look, we have this big gold, I told you so.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, and I never want to say that this medal is the reason why Oriental Adventures is bad, because Oriental Adventures was bad before we got this medal.
yeah. You
But
got a
in their
medal for
eyes, I think
pointing
that's
it
it.
out. Um,
Yeah. But yeah, it was an interesting ride. Honestly, it was tough. Like I have never received internet hate before, and I don't wish that upon anybody.
yeah. I mean, I met you.
I
When
was
I
so
met you,
young and
we were
naive.
so young and we were fucking idiots. Had Asians Represent even started yet?
No, when we first met, no,
Yeah, that's what I thought.
because I
Um,
was still running my other podcast.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
The
Curiosity
creativity,
and Focus.
curiosity, and focus.
Yeah, so
Um,
I was we because we knew each other from like online because we were both like, oh, you do education and gaming, you
yeah,
do education and gaming, we should be friends. And then we met at Gen Con. No, we met at Gen Con 2018.
because of
I
Mark.
remember because of Mark.
Yeah,
And the first time we met was like, hey, we're sharing this bed, and it was a pull-out twin. The first time we met in person, I remember the hotel room. Mark and Eric Paquette got
hmm,
the big king size bed, and then you and I,
had the
who had
pull
just
out.
met for the first time, had the pull-out twin.
Yep.
And it was actually that Gen Con that we launched Asians Represent.
Okay.
We announced it. The first
Yeah.
episode came out a month later. Yeah.
That sounds right.
So technically we were friends before Asians Represent started.
Yes. And now you've won an award for it. So you kind of made an offhand comment about now being in a position where you can be selective about the work
Mhm.
you take on. What what gets you interested these days, right? Because
Oh yeah.
I think people can make an assumption about that, but who knows? Um,
Yeah, I mean if you know me or you follow me online, you probably know exactly what interests me.
well, sure, but
But
like
for the most part it's like something that interests me is like Banana Chan came up to me and was like, "Hey, do you want to write about the history of Chinatown?" I was like, "I'm
Sure,
in."
totally.
Right. That's a pretty straightforward one. Another project, they came to me and they were like, "Hey, we're doing a 5e thing," and they were like, "Wait, wait, wait! Before you say no, we're doing this 5e thing, and it's not set in the Forgotten Realms, and it's actually a historical thing. You just using the 5e system, and we will give you free reign to write anything Asian."
Okay, not
And
a bad
without
offer.
saying what the setting is, um, it is it. I was in. Um, so there are opportunities that I think are really neat in that they allow me to take old ideas that I've had
Hmm.
that I've never acted upon and actually get, put them out into the world with I would say minimal effort because I don't have to do production.
Sure.
Then there are the projects where I think, okay, this is going to be really important,
Hmm.
and I would really like to be a part of it. And I also think that I can make this very good because it's gonna, get a lot of attention. For instance, like the Ancestries book.
Or the 5e Ancestry book?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
Arcanist Press one.
Uh-huh.
So I was the consultant on that one.
Okay.
And when they approached me, they were like, "Hey, this is our idea." And I was like, "Oh, this is really cool. Let's chat about it." And I thought this is something that the 5e community needs. I'd like to be a part of it. And so I said yes. Then there are the people who are like, "Hey, we want you to write an adventure in this book," and I was like, "Okay, I don't care." And not because I don't care about that person or I don't care about D&D, but because my time is so limited that I really only want to work on projects that either push my community forward
Hmm.
through representation or just that information being out there, or something that's like truly unique and interests me.
So on that second one, right? I think there's the one hand which is topics that interest us,
Yeah.
um, but on the other, I have watched your design sensibilities shift over the years, right?
Significantly. They've gone like
Significantly,
180.
yeah. Because you started, if we were to put Trad in the middle when we met, you were still here, but you were edging toward the story game side, right? You
Mm-hmm.
you had DW be an influence. You were going PbtA. I mean, you were friends with Mark and Eric, who are pretty firmly story game guys.
Yeah.
Um, in the past while, I mean, it was anything but D&D. That's what it was called, right? The
Anything but
Patreon
D&D was
pod.
the little mini series I did. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I was on that to explain what the OSR was, which I still think is a weird choice because I don't consider myself particularly OSR. As I don't consider myself to be part of any specific vertical,
Yeah,
let's
but
say.
but again, I had you on because you're a historian.
Sure, sure. But by the end of that, you kind of came away being like, oh, maybe I'm OSR, which I was a little surprised by, honestly.
I will disagree in that I was leaning towards the OSR well before that conversation. Those
Okay.
several hours. I'll tell you exactly when
Was it
I
Harn?
realized it wasn't Harn because I don't Harn isn't really OSR because it's rules heavy.
Sure. Well, I mean,
Uh,
they're for another time. For another time.
but yeah, that's a different
Yeah.
different kind of rules. It's detail heavy.
Hmm.
I think the thing that started to get me away from D&D of all things was Coriolis.
Okay. Yeah, that
Because
fits.
I
You
started to see
fucking love
something
that
that I was
game.
like, oh, this could be crunchy, but it's not.
Hmm.
And then I started playing games like Lady Blackbird, which I thought was like,
Sure.
really interesting and different. But the exact moment when I realized that I was like, oh, I can't just play D&D for the rest of my life was at Gen Con 2018
Okay.
when you, myself, um, Jordan, and Jess were walking around the show floor and you showed me this tiny little booth and you said, you have to buy these two things. And I
Tuesday
said, what
Night
are they?
Games, Mothership.
Yes. And you said, you have to buy these two things and don't worry, you're going to love them. And I know you're going to love them. And you passed me both of them and it was Dead Planet and Mothership.
Hmm.
And I said, okay. I bought them because they looked dope. First of all, like incredible, unlike anything I'd ever seen. And then I took it home, and I'll admit, I didn't take a look at it for like 2 months. I had a client who I was playing one on one with.
Okay.
He had a lot of medical issues, so we were actually
Through
playing.
Level Up.
Yeah, through Level Up,
Okay.
and just independently as well. We were actually playing a lot at a hospital, so I would actually go and sanitize dice and everything. And I was like, okay, how to make this simple? And he wanted to play Starfinder.
Okay.
So I was
Not
like, cool,
simple.
play Starfinder, but I don't want to go through all the Starfinder adventure path and any of that. So I was literally like, okay, we'll make you a character in Starfinder and we'll roll a d20 and the damage dice. But everything else you do, I'm going to use this mothership Dead Planet thing. And we ran through Dead Planet.
Hmm.
And I just used it as a setting. And it changed everything for me. Yeah,
Okay.
that was it. That's when I realized that I was like, oh, I don't have to use these crunchy adventures. So I don't have to write these crunchy adventures. And I should actually be using things that are purposefully written, have almost no fluff, and are just so clear and concise and different. Yeah. And then
Um,
there's also the fact that there's no expectation to use every single thing in that book.
yeah, God. I
Yeah.
think I
Right?
think about Kingmaker, which not the video game, the original OG Pathfinder Adventure Path, where it's just
Yeah, I
like
know.
it's so beloved, and I just can't be bothered. It's like if you were like, I'm gonna run D&D, here's the Cimmerillion, use all of it.
Well, yeah.
Why is that I don't know. Again, it is for somebody. I can't deny that. I can't outright say, well, the only reason people would use Kingmaker is because they're completely ignorant of the fact that other things exist. But then also, I get to point to someone like you and be like, well, actually, they might literally be ignorant of it. Um, like
Yeah.
it's just they never have had cause for exposure, and so this is the totality of what they expect out of an adventure module.
Well, that's
Um,
why going to a con and being like, I'm not just going to go buy dice or D&D stuff. I'm going to literally look at every single booth at this con and talk to every single person. And maybe that's just me, right? I feel like at cons, I'm like, you ever watch Parks and Recreation?
mhm.
Yeah, I'm like Chris Traeger,
Sure,
like
you
John
you
Lowe's character, and I'm
100%
like,
are.
tell me about this. I want to hear this. That sounds cool. And I'll talk to everybody at a con. I mean, that's how I learned about Harn. I literally went to their booth and they were like, "Do you want a free map?" I'm like, "I'll take a free map, but what's it of?" And then they
So
told me about Harn, and I went back to you. I was like, "Joe, have you ever heard about this thing called Harn?" And you were like, "Shut up,
yeah,
Daniel."
it's almost exactly my reaction. I'm pretty
Of
sure.
course, I know what Harn is.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you are very much a Chris Traeger. I am very much a Ben. Um,
You are.
but like simultaneously, yeah. What is the number one reason I go back to Gen Con? I don't sell anything. I don't make anything. I go because I get to walk up and down the aisles, see what's new, watch people's reactions, get a hands-on impression of like what the next 6 months is going to shape out like. Um,
It's like market research for you, but
Essentially,
also
yeah.
you're collecting as at the same time. And it's not market research for you in the sense that I need to know what's hot so I can publish that. You just want to know.
I just want to know. I need to be able, if I can see the trends emerging in real time, I'll have an easier time cataloging them. Um,
Yeah.
so, speaking of trends emerging,
Hmm.
no, that's a terrible segue. I don't
You're
have a.
getting better. You're getting
No,
better.
no, no. I don't have a good segue. I'm just. You're
Practice.
working. You're working on a bestiary right now, which may
It's
grow
more than
into
a
something
bestiary
more.
now.
Yeah. Um, what do you want to say about it?
Oh my God. It's like it's I would say that like my last four Amazon purchases have all been about that project.
Okay.
Literally, I after you and I started talking about the OSR for anything but D&D, that show I did on my Patreon, I was like, oh, this is really cool. And you started sending me stuff, and I was like, you were like, read this, read this. You don't have to read the whole thing about this, but read this little thing here, or look how they did these maps. And I was like, okay, 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 I could do this, but Chinese. And then I started asking you. I've asked you a lot. I was like, okay, is there a lot of like Asian OSR stuff? And you're like, nah,
Yeah, not really.
not really. And I was like, oh, this is excellent. And so I was like, okay, let me try my hand at this. I'll, do some design. How hard could it be? And I'm like, oh, this is actually fairly straightforward because these systems are so simple.
Mm-hmm.
And there were some learning curves. I'm like, okay, Joe, is this balanced or not? Or does this even matter? And you're like,
Mm-hmm.
cut that out. Um,
I mean, we've had conversations of like, how do you do gold for XP in a culture where like actually maybe the gold doesn't matter, or the creatures won't have a hoard of loot. Um,
Yeah. And it turns out, like, with that exact example, like the creatures that I was writing about had intrinsic medicinal value.
mhm.
So I was like, well, there's your gold for XP analogy. And I wrote that into the book. So then I guess what that led to was 2 volumes of Denizens of Mountains and Seas, which are basically collections of 8 Chinese monsters from classical literature, all done with academic research. So like literally, this is my notebook. Um, and I'm working on volume 2 right now. Well, not volume 2, a follow up to volume 2. And literally, my notebook is color coded with academic citations. Like I'm doing this like I was working on my doctorate. And when I was doing Denizens, I was like, okay, I'm gonna create monsters. I'm going to do 8 of them because 8 is a lucky Chinese number, and I'm going to release 2 volumes of 8 because double 8 means double happiness. And then with each monster, I'm going to put as much historical and cultural context as possible. So people don't make the same mistakes as Gygax and Co. did for Oriental Adventures.
I mean, mistakes is generous.
I like to, positive intent is really important to me.
Fair.
Um, so I did that, and then I was like, oh, what else could I do? Well, I could just create a whole micro setting. So that's what I'm working on right now.
I mean, hence, I guess. So in the
All of the
beginning,
stuff I've asked you.
yeah, yeah. In the beginning, it was definitely me sending you things, and that very quickly reversed to me opening my phone and being like, I have like 8 messages from Daniel. It's like, oh, do I have? Yeah, I have this. Yeah, yeah. Here, let me just send them.
Yeah, it's like, do you have this? Or like, how do I do this? Or what is a good example of this? Or all things that I've asked you. Because looping back to your first question, I don't want to design something that A hasn't already been done, or like B, I want to make sure that I'm designing something um, that fits within the existing OSR ecosystem,
I mean, this
right?
was this was one of the first questions, right? Like, what's the common language? Um,
Hmm.
if I'm picking a system, what am I picking? Um, and that
Exactly.
was kind of where this started. I think in a big way, it was just like,
Yeah, because then we kind of settled on like, okay, well, you have your trad sensibilities, but here's something that kind of might work towards it, and we went with like old school essentials.
mhm,
And I was like, okay, old school essentials works, but I also like Five Torches Deep.
mhm,
And so I'm going to combine those two, but I'm going to explain it to my reader. And now I'm kind of at the point where I'm like, do I just take stats away entirely?
I
I'm
mean,
at this point where like I'm just like slashing everything out of it because they're
there
like irrelevant, irrelevant,
there are some great statless bestiaries out there. Um,
or like minimal
statless.
stats. I'm like, do I get rid of treasure entirely, and or like, do I get rid of references to treasure tables in old school essentials when I could just write here is what is valuable? Because I like the gold for XP idea. I really love it. And the way you described it to me makes total sense to me on why it's better than killing shit for XP, right? It encourages problem solving. And as a teacher, I like that. Um, but do I need to refer to these like treasure type U? I don't need that. I'm just going to cut that out
Yeah,
and
you
write
don't.
something different.
No, that's yeah, that's a waste of
Yeah, right.
space.
And that goes and that's going to be in Denizens 1 and 2 just because.
Sure.
But when I collect everything, I'm going to just like cut things out.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, a lot of things that even reference a lot of things that don't screw around with system, right? Like things that aren't are just going to go, well, we're purely OSE compatible. We'll ditch that stuff just because it's not needed. If I can
Yeah.
flip to a page and just be like, ah, it has 100 gold, cool, I'm good.
Yeah, I don't want the player to have to go to this. But at the same time, it's like, well, that's there if you need it. You also don't have to use it,
Sure.
right? Use what you want.
Yeah, which I think is like, I mean, going all the way back to the beginning is a core reason to just read everything, right? Like to be widely read isn't to be beholden to it. It's to know the bits and pieces that you can steal and use and make your
Yeah.
own.
Like if you bought my zine and you were like, I like this one sentence you wrote because it's a cool plot hook,
Just
I'm
fucking
totally
use it.
fine with that.
Yeah.
If you bought the zine and you're like, I really like the descriptions, but I think the stats are stupid and they're not balanced, I don't care. That's great. Thank
Yeah.
you. If you also bought it and were like, I'm going to use everything to the letter, cool,
Yeah.
right? But like reading into the OSR and learning that way taught me that.
Um, you stumped me the other day. What was it on? What was the first thing I wasn't able to provide?
Adventures of the in the Yolnaj forest.
That's
I ended
right.
up buying it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's awesome. And that one is statless.
Mm-hmm.
It's statless. I'm happy I paid for it because I think the art is wonderful. It's got the Mike Mignola sort of
Yeah,
style.
Zeshiro
Hellboy.
did it, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think it's wonderful. And it actually inspired how I'm going to approach my own. And I have a title actually, because our friend Angus actually gave me the title. He gave me the title on the 26th because I wrote that down. Uh, it's going to be called Chronicles of Spring and Autumn.
I like it.
Um, because the Chinese historical period that this is inspired by is the spring and autumn period,
Okay. That's
right?
good.
But that's just how I work.
Sure. No, totally. And I understand the point of couching it as like, and we've both been doing this of,
Hmm.
you're not wrong if you do it a different way. You're not dumb if you think a different way. Like, I believe those things to be true. Um, but also, it's me and you talking, and like, I don't
Yeah,
know,
but you and
fuck
I
the other
have a good
people.
rapport. Like we were. I like to think that we're more than just internet friends. Also, because you've stayed with me before, and
Yeah.
like I think you and I can disagree on things we like, and we do disagree on things we like, but we still have, mutual respect for one another.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important in tabletop gaming. I think every designer needs to have friends who will like call them out on their shit, which I know you and Mark will do, unsolicited too.
Yeah.
But call them out on their shit, but also, like help them improve. Like Mark, like I've learned so much from, Mark's experiences doing Headspace and watching Mark make treads,
God,
right? And how
that's
treads has evolved.
what a
What a
laborious process that has been.
right? Seeing Mark do treads is like I'm never doing a board game.
Yeah.
That's the lesson I learned. I will do a card game, but I will never do a board game. Um, honestly, I would be interested in doing a war game,
I mean, I
like
could
a
see that.
skirmish game.
Like but you also are you still like super deep into Gaslands?
Yeah, I think it's awesome.
Okay, cool. That's what I thought. Have you spread out into other skirmish games from there?
Well, originally, like I have roots in Warhammer.
Oh, I didn't actually know that.
Yeah, I have roots in Warhammer from like high school, like
Warhammer Fantasy?
40K. Oh, I
Okay.
was Warhammer 40K guy, Tyranids. My brother was a Necrons guy.
Okay.
Played Lord of the Rings as well.
The
Um,
the Games Workshop Lord of the Rings?
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
the original one.
Yeah.
Um, like my cave troll and my Urukai army is still at my parents' place. It's so poorly painted. Um, I have like really fond memories of that. Don't care for the amount of dice you have to roll. Um, don't care for the cost. But when I got into Gaslands by Osprey, I that changed everything in wargaming for me.
When what? That was 2 years ago?
2 years
Less.
ago.
Okay.
Yeah, 2 years ago I got into Gaslands. I'm on like a Gaslands Facebook group. I follow the Gaslands hashtag on Instagram. I haven't played in a while just because you kind of need people for that.
I have some friends experimenting with tabletop sim Gaslands.
I want to
So,
play it on tabletop sim because honestly, Gaslands is a super fun game. But Gaslands was like super rules light and also super cheap, right? But there was a time when Sarah, my partner, had to stop me from like going to the dollar store and buying Hot Wheels because it's but yeah, because I was like, oh, she's like, you haven't even kitted out these other cars, and I have like a box full of 3D printed weapons that like a friend in Ottawa sent me, that I have to use. But then Gaslands got me looking at like other skirmish games. Like long before you and I started talking about it, I was looking at Rangers of Shadow Deep. I was looking at Frostgrave. Um, I was watching like other creators like Ash from Guerrilla Miniatures,
sure.
and just watching how they're using these miniature games to tell stories. And I was like, wait, what? Solo skirmish games? This is really cool. And then that got me thinking about, you know, OSR stuff. And then it got me thinking about, well, like, should I be looking at war games, and yeah,
I mean, it's
I'm all over the
extremely
place though, as you could probably tell.
it's very full circle though, right? Like,
Oh yeah, because the sort of history that I have,
yeah,
I war games.
yeah. It just it the through line is already there. It doesn't even require that much work. It's just like, oh shit, chainmail was a war game. Um,
Yeah.
and just coming back around. Like the fact that Osprey now has a whole line in addition to Gaslands that are essentially just narrative skirmish games. Um,
Hmm.
like that sits exactly alongside their RPG output, like Romance of the Perilous Lands.
Hmm.
Like just right next to each other. There's no material difference except that one of them makes it explicit how you use a mini, and one of them kind of just suggests that you could. Um,
Yeah. And I like how like, all of their books are super, super thin and just like to the point.
yeah.
I think that's so important. Not only because like, look, time is like we all only have just a little bit of time, right? We don't have that much time on our hands.
Wow, that's
I'm,
dark, dude.
I
Oh,
mean, yeah, it's true.
not in a like universal
We're all
sense.
gonna die soon. No, no, it's like, look, like I got a full-time job and I work long hours and I have other projects. I don't have time to sit down and read a 400-page book, rule book. Like the last time I read a really, really large rule book was Vihander.
Wow, I mean, God love you. I
Like cover to cover.
yeah, no, I mean, I have done it. I'm always surprised when someone else has.
I thought it was really cool because it was
Yeah,
also a different kind of game when I first met Daniel Fox.
sure.
Um,
It's more
but
I
now
just
it's just like
I'm surprised anyone these days can read a large RPG rulebook.
that's the thing. And you know what? Reading through Zweihander or like a book like Coriolis
Sure.
takes forever, at least for me. I've got, ADHD and very like mild dyslexia.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I see a book that is A, well designed, B, clear and concise, it gets my attention.
Fair. Yeah, I don't think I've ever really put that together. You have been explicit about like, hey, if I'm going to send you a recommendation, have it be something relatively short so that you can get through it without
Yeah,
too much trouble. But also, like, when I think about what are your favorite games historically, they are all quite large books.
they are, but it's because I've had time to learn them.
Sure.
Right? Like right now, like what are the games that I would love to play? Right? The games that I would love to play are like I really enjoy playing Quest. Um,
Have
which is
have you
sorry, go
started?
ahead.
Have you started that? That's going to be your new pod game, right?
Yeah, we did a session 0 with it, and then we did a 2-episode miniseries with it, which is about 5 hours of content.
Okay.
And honestly, Quest is really good. I think it's really good for streamers. Is it a game that I would play as my primary game? No.
Okay.
But it's a game that I think is very interesting to play at a table with folks who just want to shoot the shit and roll some dice.
Sure.
Right? It's a game that I would play with folks who are, creative and willing to adapt on the fly.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I want to do this Kamehameha thing. Well, let's just
No,
roll and
just
do
do
it.
it. Yeah.
Right? Like that's the kind of game I want. Like down the line, like I don't want a lot in life, Joe. Like all I want is a medium-sized house. Fine, a small house in Toronto, with a room that just has a beautiful gaming table at the center and a collection of terrain and miniatures and a nice computer and a group of friends who I could share all of this with.
I feel like you
And
already have most of that.
I have most of that except for the dedicated room because of the home I live in
That's fair, but you have the
and a table.
space.
Yes, I do, but and like that's why I'm very satisfied with life, right?
Yeah, no, I get it.
Actually, what's really funny, I'm talking to my dad, and my dad's like, you know what we should build, Daniel? We should build a D&D table.
Are you still
My
playing
dad.
that? Are you still doing that with your family? Are you still playing the
Yeah,
game?
we're still playing, but
Okay.
like lately, like we stopped playing D&D because we got really into mahjong, and
That's
so we're
right.
playing mahjong. Um, I really suck at it, and everyone else is super good.
I'm great at mahjong, so
I'm so bad at it. Maybe it's a focus thing, but I'm just like, yeah, sure, okay. Um, but like, yeah, like my parents have gotten into it, and it's kind of gotten it's kind of what's kept me into D&D because it's the rule set my parents know.
Hmm.
And it's brought us closer together. But every time we've played D&D has never been like um actually no, we played one of original D&D adventure. And we played
Wait,
the intro like
OD&D?
the like,
Like first
no 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 no
edition?
no sorry,
Okay.
like a wizard's product.
Oh, okay.
We played the intro adventure to the Wild Mount book,
Okay.
Frozen Sick.
Yeah, yeah.
We played that one because we were doing it remotely and there were just a lot of really easy assets I could get on Roll20.
Sure.
But once we started playing in person, I was like, Trilemma Adventures.
I mean, it's by a Toronto native, so might as well.
Yeah, and
Um,
it was great.
should just send your parents a link to like Wormwood, just the website,
Oh,
and
I've showed them. Trust me, I've shown them. Like we've
just
had long conversations about like, okay, you can do here. Here's some plans that I found online because my dad's like, well, my parents are retired and my dad loves to build things. And he's like, they're redoing their basement, and my dad's like, okay, we have this space. We should put a gaming table at the center. We could play Mahjong on it. We could play D&D on it. And I was like, oh my god, this is the best thing ever.
yeah, wow.
Um, yeah, and it's cool because tabletop games and experimenting with them actually brought my family closer together during this COVID time.
God, I wish that would. I
And
have
I
to.
know so many people who are reading this or watching are probably going to be like, "Oh my god, fuck you, Daniel. I wish I could play D&D with my family."
I spent I spent an hour talking to my dad today about Unity, the game engine. Just
Oh, that's
trying.
what that tweet was about.
That's what that tweet was about. Was I mean, it was my dad and another guy, but like just trying to figure out how to explain what a game engine is to somebody in their 60s is a very interesting challenge.
The game
Um,
engine is it's like a computer's operating system. It's the personality.
it's the closest I could come to, but then they were just like, yeah, but wait, isn't Apple the 800-pound gorilla in the room? And I was like, no, because Apple doesn't make engines. And they're like, but
No.
they make tech. And I was like, okay, how do I explain this? And then if I ever try, my dad just thinks I do something with gaming. He doesn't have
vi-
it.
vi- Video games. Only recently did my parents start to understand what I'm doing here.
Yeah.
Only within the past maybe year. Um, I still really want to give them a physical copy of Frost Rifles and be like, I did it.
I mean,
Um,
it's a big thing. You should.
yeah. I'm going to. It's going to be awesome. But like, what were we? Oh yeah, video games. That's still not a thing that they understand yet. But I think the next time my parents come over, I'm going to make my dad play Flight Simulator 2020.
Next time you should just get him into Rainbow Six Siege.
No, I stopped playing that game too.
Really?
Yeah, I just like when COVID hit, it's like you're trying to minimize toxicity in your life.
Well,
Right?
fair enough. Fair enough.
So like you want to minimize toxicity in your life, and I was playing with like a group of like cool dudes, but then some people in the group are like taking it really seriously, and it's like, Daniel, you shouldn't have died there. And I'm like, look, it happened.
Yeah, I died. This is how death works.
And also probably like I was looking at another thing on my other monitor, and it was probably a thing Joe sent me. um, but like I was like, look, I don't have time for that, and also like we started gaming with people on our Discord community, and it's like I'd rather do that.
Hmm. Yeah.
Right? I'd rather play games with people who make me happy, or play games that make me happy.
Does Flight Sim make you happy?
I haven't installed it yet. It's like 120 gigs.
It's much more than that because once you install it, you have to install a giant update as well.
Well, I have to make some hard drive space.
Space. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Also, like I use the internet for my job, and when will I have time to install all of this? I have to do it overnight, and it's still not going to be overnight.
no, you're gonna have to like use it overnight and then go to a cafe the next day to do internet stuff so that you can
Yeah.
save up
And
all
I'm
your
not going to
bandwidth.
a cafe. I'm not going to a cafe. You
It's
know
fair.
me. So
Yeah.
it's going to take forever. So it's going to happen. But right now, I'm really hooked on a game called Remnant.
Oh, dude, we should play.
Oh, do you play?
Yeah, I love that game.
Oh, sick. Yeah, I play it like almost every night. Angus and I have been playing it.
Okay.
It's a lot of fun. I am level 82.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. You're fair.
I haven't beat the game yet, but I'm stuck on a boss right now.
Okay.
Um,
Great game.
but I love the game. I love the design. I think it is what I wanted the Division 2 to be.
Sure.
And I'm somebody who has 100, like almost 200 hours on the Division 2. Um, but like I love everything about it because I wish Remnant and that setting was an OSR game.
I mean, it basically is, right? Like a Souls
What?
like. Well, no, I mean, so
Oh, I mean
hear me
it's
out.
Souls like
A
with
Souls
like
like is essentially an OSR game.
yeah, no, but I mean like I want a book with that aesthetic.
I mean, you could probably license it. You could probably make it.
Nah, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. I don't have the time for that.
It's fair. I get it though. It's a very good looking aesthetic.
Yeah,
Um,
but and then yeah, and it appeals to my OSR aesthetic too. That like you know the kinds of OSR games that I really enjoy. That's Remnant, but in a third person co-op shooter.
Speaking of, did you look through Morkborg yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
I skimmed it. It looks very pretty. Will I play it? Maybe.
Okay. I mean,
Maybe.
maybe is honestly more than I had expected.
Look,
Um,
when people when like there's a like I love to read games and I love to learn about them. Literally, like every night I read a couple pages from Rangers of Shadow Deep because my partner goes to bed really early, so I'm not going to play video games. I'm literally going to lie in bed on my phone and read read Rangers of Shadow Deep. And
yeah.
I've been enjoying it, and I've been slowly painting minis and thinking about my band of Rangers or my Ranger and my Rangers companions and what the story's going to be. And I've been enjoying that. Every day I paint a little bit more. Um, but like, will I will definitely play that game because I can play it solo.
Sure.
Um, will I play Morkborg? I have to find a group to play that with. And right now, we have Dungeons into Asians. I run Level Up Gaming. Um, and I have one regular group that I really enjoy playing games with, and that's you, Mark, Angus, Nick, and Haley.
Yep.
Um, and I really like playing that. And so I'll only play Morkborg if our group plays it. But
God,
I
I would
think
I would 100% run for us, but
then I'll play it. But like I think and maybe Mark needs some time to like rest afterwards.
it's actually a thing
Um
I should reach out to and be like, hey, when we're finished with Delta Green, do you want to like take a minute before we start
yeah,
Earth
like
Dawn?
and I also think our group would be the most fantastic group to play Ross rifles with.
I could see it. Yeah.
Because like we have all the makings of different characters who are like different person because you tend to play like those jaded characters, which would be perfect for World War One,
Hmm.
right? Like Nick and Haley play very like thoughtful, quirky characters because right now they're academics, which I think would be really cool for the First World War.
Hmm.
Like Mark is like very much that tactician
Hmm.
sort of character, which I think works really well. And then Angus plays that outlier, that goofy outlier, who actually fits really well into a World War One narrative.
Yeah.
Um, and I guarantee if we play Ross rifles, Angus will play a French a French soldier. And I think it would be super fun. I know Mark also wants to run Earth Dawn,
Hmm.
um, because I've wanted to play that game since he told me about the magic system in that game at Gen Con 2018.
Yeah. At
That steakhouse.
yeah, which I'm blanking on the name, but I know exactly. St.
Yeah,
Elmo's.
they have. Yeah, and they have the amazing shrimp cocktail.
Yeah.
But like, this is that thing again. Like, I hear about games from other people, and I hear about the cool things they like about those games, and I want to try them.
Hmm.
But I will only be able to play these games if the groups that I feel safe playing games with and the groups that I enjoy playing games with will play them.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, that's the deciding factor. Like, there are tons of games that I want to play. I'm glad you want to run Morkborg because I will play the shit out of it then. Um, like, I would love to play an old school Essentials game,
I won't
but
run that for you because I don't actually enjoy OSE, but fair enough.
exactly. So then that means I won't play it.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean I won't read it. I will look at
Totally.
it. I will look for inspiration in it.
Hmm.
And that will be the extent to my interaction with that game. And that doesn't mean that the game's bad. It just means that I don't have the time to play it.
Yeah, it means that, and this is the common problem, right?
And I think most people need to accept that and understand
Yeah.
that it is okay to buy a game to A, support a creator,
Hmm.
B, buy it because you think it's beautiful. Trilemma Adventures is very much a really good book, but also B, a beautiful coffee table
Yeah,
book.
it's gorgeous.
It's gorgeous, right? Or C, buy it because you think certain aspects of it might be useful to a game that you regularly play.
Yeah.
That's it,
I mean,
right?
that's
Like,
most of the. I buy things because they look good on a shelf. I buy things to have them and go through them. And I buy things if I think they're going to improve my work somehow. That's it.
yeah, exactly. Like, I really like Coriolis, and I've worked on some ideas around that system.
Mm-hmm.
Will I publish anything? Probably not. Um,
You know, Trilemma's
will
getting a year zero supplement, right?
I saw. Um, and I think doing a year zero game might be neat. Um, but I think my priority right now is like A, we have to print Ross rifles, but that's kind of out of my hands.
Yeah.
Um, my priority right now is doing my OSR book for Zine Quest 2021.
Is I mean, wow, you're gonna eat up a whole lot of ZQ3 money.
What do you mean?
No, I'm kidding. Kind of like the old joke of there's a limited pool of money that goes around.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I feel like and be like, okay, cool. Like, well, that's gonna be one of the $40,000 or $50,000 projects. Um,
Fingers crossed.
yeah,
That's the plan. Got to find myself a graphic designer and an artist for that one.
I mean, just get Jordan on layout.
But the thing is, like, it's a Chinese project. I want to get like
Fair.
Asian creators. Um, like, I would love Jordan to do layout. Actually, maybe I should. I mean, it's Chinese content.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think Jordan is brilliant.
I mean, that's the thing is like, I
Also, I just love going out and eating food with him
he
and
true.
Jess.
I mean, they did come to Toronto and have a great food time with you. Okay, this will be for another time because I'm blanking on it right now, but I'll try to
That's
come up with
fine.
a short list of people who might be interested and aren't just white folks. Um,
That's the problem.
yeah.
But like we make sacrifices. I'm like, I think it's okay for us to
Sometimes you
like
just
I'm
have to
on
work with the whites.
yeah, like exactly. Like I got approached by a company, and I'll tell you off stream and off recording, to do some merch with us.
Okay.
And their company I think is really cool, but they are white folks. But that's okay because it's our content.
Hmm.
It's Asian content, it's Asian representation, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
And our name's on it, so why not?
You do what you have to until you don't have to do it anymore.
Exactly. And maybe in the future, Asians Represent will become a company that publishes,
That would be right. I
right?
would love that.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Um,
Um, but for now, you gave me an hour of your time quite
I mean,
generously.
do you have like any like let's go for one more question and then
I
I
don't.
gotta actually go eat.
Okay, I don't fucking have questions.
Okay, I have a question for you then.
Sure, shoot.
What is the most beautiful TTRPG on your shelf? And
Physically attractive, or are you gonna just leave beautiful?
no,
Like,
just beautiful. Like, okay, let's go physically attractive and just like beautiful.
uh, wow, Jesus fucking Christ. That's a hard one.
Aha, gotcha.
Yeah, no, no, no. I mean, how do I even answer that? Okay, probably my favorite looking one is the new edition of the Bloody Handed Name of Bronze. Um,
Okay, yeah.
I think it has unbelievable layout. Morkborg is certainly up there as well.
Hmm.
Um, e- Probably one of those two would be what I'd have to pick for physically. Or Bluebeard's Bride.
I would say
Um,
the ultimate edition, like the collector's edition of
yeah,
Bluebeard's Bride, that one is it's beautiful.
yeah,
For me, Trilemma, I just love the binding, the art,
sure. The
absolutely
construction of
gorgeous.
Trilemma is excellent.
Yeah. And that art, the art style really speaks to me.
If I
I
could
like
choose
that.
a selection, the
Hmm.
game's omnivorous zines. They're
Oh,
four
I got
adventures.
Forgotten Land, Forbidden Lands.
Really, I would not have put that there. It's a
Uh
very staid aesthetic for me.
yeah, I guess for you, but for me, it's something that I don't encounter a lot.
That's fair. Um, it just feels very like the deluxe editions of the reprints of like AD&D books that WotC did. I'm just like,
Yeah,
cool, it's leatherette, it's attractive, but like it doesn't do anything
yeah, it's the only thing
astounding.
like that on my shelf
Fair,
physically.
fair.
Yeah,
Um,
I love the art in Coriolis.
See, that's always interesting because Coriolis is to me one of the least attractive books Free League has put out.
I would agree with you there.
Okay.
I would
Um,
100% agree with you there. Like Tales from the Loop is a million times more attractive.
or I would put any of the Mutant games up against that. Like, I think the art in those games is far better.
I
Um,
would disagree on Megatron. I think
okay, I could see it. Yeah,
that's my least favorite of the mutant ones. But
that's
I will
fair.
say yes, the mutant games are way better.
Yeah. I don't know. I go for that like Mike Mignola style art much more than I go for like the painterly look that's
The
in
oil
Coriolis.
painting sort of look.
Yeah. I think there's a way to do that well. I just
Hmm.
we have very different feelings on Coriolis.
We do. Like I have mixed ones too. Like I think the system is cool because of the memories I have playing it. Um, when again, my impression of games, as likely are yours, are based on the time that I read them and the time that I played them, and
Absolutely.
that should be the same for everyone,
Hmm.
right? Um, there
I
are problematic aspects of Coriolis as well, as a game being marketed as 1001 Arabian Nights in space.
hmm Yeah.
Um, but as somebody who's read that cover to cover, there are certainly things that I won't catch. But as somebody who has had, a lot of experience with Islam and the Islamic world professionally,
hmm
I thought it was also a game that handles faith pretty interestingly,
hmm
um, as something kind of woven into the fabric of everybody's life and existence in that world, but also isn't something that's like thrown in your face or used to tokenize or signal a particular culture.
Yeah.
And I think that's really cool. I think the art is neat. I like the combat because it's just crunchy enough to remind me of other games or a war
Yeah.
game because the combat is very much like a war game. But the dice mechanics and the way I've at least played it have just been with a lot of narrative fluidity.
Sure. Um,
Yeah.
and I mean, I think so. We might disagree on Coriolis, but like what you're describing there, by and large, outside of the setting, is why I love the Year Zero engine.
That's why I like Free League in general.
Exactly. Um,
Yeah.
because I think they give that trad feel without all the burdensome elements that come with most trad games.
From a design perspective, their best game is Mutant Year Zero,
Yeah, I
I think.
I think so too. Although I haven't played Alien yet, so
Yeah, I haven't played Alien. I have to find the right group to play that one with.
I'd just rather play any number of other games that already give me that experience, be it like 316 Carnage Among the Stars or
Dread.
Mothership. Yeah,
I
I could do it in fucking Dread for like
think
all.
An Alien game with Dread would be really
I
cool.
mean, do
Um,
do something like Alien Isolation, where you're like hiding from the alien on a spaceship, mostly alone. Do it as Dread as a solitaire game, and boom, you have a
or like a star-crossed hack where it's you and the alien.
wow.
There's a game right
Yeah,
there.
100%. Just do. Do you know Fog of Love?
Yeah, it's a board
Yeah,
game.
yeah. Just do Fog of Love, but
Yeah.
Alien. Um,
I've got a hack that I'm planning on doing in the future.
okay.
I have to figure out a way to do it without getting in trouble.
Okay.
Um, but it has been made very clear to me by lots and lots of fans that Ross Rifles is the perfect game to do a Clone Wars RPG.
Okay. You would get in a lot of trouble,
Yeah. So
but
I
you
want I
could.
want
If you just anonymized it enough, you'd probably be fine.
yeah, I want to do I want to do a live play set during the Clone Wars using Ross Rifles.
Sure.
But then I also kind of want to publish a hack of Ross Rifles meant for like, oh yes, this is for the conflict of the clones or something
The
like that.
conflict of the copies.
Yeah, or copy wars.
Copy wars.
And it's
Copy
just
copy battle.
copy battle. Yeah. Set at, the collapse. There are the separate, can't call them separatists. Well, I
No,
guess you could. It's generic enough.
the separators.
The separators versus no, can't say Republicans. That's
No,
that's not right.
that's Fuck, that would be the word though. That would be the way you
That
go.
would be the word, right? The no, that's the only word, and we
There
can't
you
use
go.
it.
All right. Yeah.
Copy battle is dead.
Copy Battle's
Um,
dead.
yeah.
R.I.P. R.I.P. before it ever lived. Um,
Hmm.
I have no idea what the most emotionally beautiful game that I own is. However, Harlem Unbound first printing might actually take the
Oh yeah,
cake.
I've got a copy of that
Yeah.
amazing book. I'm
Um,
very excited to get my copy of Haunted West.
Me too.
Yeah,
Um, a
not just
lot
because
of
I wrote
people.
for it, but
Oh,
yeah,
I didn't know you did actually.
yeah, I wrote two sections of the book. It's
Okay,
the only like Lovecraftian writing credit I have.
fair.
Yeah, I wrote a section on the Chinese people of San Francisco,
Okay,
and I wrote a section on the indigenous peoples.
okay.
Did a lot of research.
Um, the writing team on that is stellar, but
Yeah,
I
Chris was
expect
very organized.
Chris is
Yeah,
a very organized man,
yeah,
which is part of why I haven't been able to get him on the show yet. Um, One
yeah.
of these
I've been.
days.
Yeah, we were. He was going to be the first non-Asian guest on Asians Represent,
Okay.
and it would just when the Gamma thing happened, he was very busy.
Well, he's. I don't remember his title, but he has a board seat on Gamma now, right?
He does now, which is why it was he was super busy, and it
Yeah.
just never happened.
Um,
Um, I'm trying to think of emotionally beautiful games, and we should end there.
yeah.
For me,
I mean, I have a lot. It's just a question of what's the most. Um,
I think one is like if we say emotionally beautiful, is it a game that evokes very um, strong memories for you as a person, or is it a game that does that mechanically?
oh, that's. I would have to say the second, because the first is to me what's the game that I have the most beautiful memories of, versus what
Yeah,
is the most
exactly.
beautiful game I have.
For me, it would be third edition TNT.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it would be Vampire the Requiem. Um,
Mm. Emotionally beautiful games, though, I think. I mean, I might have asked a question that I don't have an answer to.
yeah, no, I mean,
Hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I haven't found a game that's like that for me.
Oh no, I know I have. Though they're usually fairly small things.
That's
Pretty like,
okay.
yeah. I can't believe I'm blanking on the name now, but Catherine Raman did a game for Codex magazine about the
Okay.
cross-dresser scene in New York in the 1990s. Um, and I think it was in Codex Glamour. And that might be the one for me.
Oh,
I'm struggling to think of the name.
yeah.
Um, I'm generally like Catherine Raman's works are probably going to take up like the top several spots in the top 10 for me. But I think that's the one that takes the top spot. Um,
Hmm,
and it's
hmm.
really bothering me that I can't remember the name right now.
Yeah,
Um,
I can't even think of a game that has done that for me in a mechanical sense.
I don't know. Oh,
Maybe,
well, hi Bubbles.
I don't know. Maybe Tales from the Loop, mostly because it makes you think about your parents from an Asian perspective.
Okay.
But I've only ever run that game. I've never actually gotten to be a player.
Hmm. Well,
But
one of these days, maybe I run it for you.
I think it'd be fun.
Yeah.
I think it'd be fun. I was actually working on doing a Tales from the Loop stream for Asians Represent.
Nice.
But I'm keeping that one off stream for now.
Fair. I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, if I ran it, I'd probably run Things from the Flood instead.
Yeah. Darker.
Yeah.
You can die.
More my style.
Yeah.
Um,
I actually did you back their new game? That's why
Twilight 2000 or 2000?
yeah.
Yeah, at the like fancy metal tin level.
Oh, lucky. I backed just at the box set level.
I just that's a that's both a specific game that I have always been a fan of, um, and like very much my shit.
It's I've never interacted with that property before. I don't know anything about it, but the pitch was like, I'm in, I'm in. Here, take my money.
Yeah, no, 100%. And it's like that's the kind of thing where I'm more than happy to spend extra to have like a fancy physical version of it.
It's also a game that I know I will only play with certain people, and you were one of them.
Exactly. Right? That's not a game that I'm gonna sign up for a session at a con.
No,
Um,
same with like Bluebeard's Bride.
totally. Right?
It's a game that I would not play at a con.
I've played
Um,
Bluebeards exactly once, and it was because for once in my life a good session, a good group came together for it.
I have played Bluebeard's exactly never.
It's a lot.
I have read it, and I think it's one of my favorite. I will end on this because I have
Okay.
to go. One of my favorite pieces of TTRPG art is actually in Bluebeard's Bride. And there's this one piece, and it's the back of a woman, and she's ripping her skin off her back. That is my favorite piece of TTRPG art ever because it made me feel.
It's good. All right, buddy. Thank
All
you.
right,
Go eat
no
something.
problem. Yes,
DM me all the shit that you couldn't say on stream/recording.
I'll tell you after. Just tell when we're offline. I'll tell you
Okay.
before we start. Before
Cool.
I go.
All right. I'm gonna cut the recording